Mr. Ashton, if you can just pull that microphone up high as you can, because I know yesterday
Yeah,
people said that we were having a tough time hearing, and this is very interesting to us.
Okay. So hopefully won't pop my keys on this microphone. So in terms of the discussions, or a large part of the discussions is with regards to incentives. So as staff, we did look at best practices, and best practices for delivering incentives is through a community, or sort of through a housing community improvement plan. So if council is considering incentivizing affordable housing, we would look at best practices of other municipalities. Some of the municipalities that we reviewed, their housing CIPs included communities that share characteristics with Belleville. Peterborough and Barrie are two communities that we did review housing CIPs. It's important to look at what other communities do because these represent established programs and it will allow us to investigate the successes of these programs if we are contemplating using these same programs as part of the Belleville Community Improvement Plan for housing. So the Planning Act establishes the ability for municipalities to have a community improvement plan. So essentially the role of a community improvement plan is to sort of improve the community in a number of ways. So housing is one of those aspects that can be addressed through a community improvement plan. I think it's important, again, when we have these discussions about what does affordable housing mean. So if you looked, and these are just characteristics and specific sections of other municipality CMPs. So we see that Barrie defines community or affordable housing specifically as average market rent in the region. We see that Cambridge uses the region statistics, which is important. Sometimes the region statistics are slightly different than the ministries or the Stats Canada's average market rents. So Peterborough uses at or below market rates for some of their incentives, and Sudbury as well uses units rented out at or below market rates. So when we look at specific programs, one of the incentives is the development charge, either deferral, reduction, or exception. So then we start seeing some of the targeting of development charges to sort of goals of the municipality. Barrie, they're wanting to see intensification of mixed-use areas as part of their housing strategy. So they provide for 50% development charge rebate on growth-related commercial development. The idea is that affordable housing built on that related commercial development. Cambridge defers development charges for 20 years, and Peterborough has a housing reserve fund in the city to pay up to $500,000 to provide grants towards DCs at 100% refund subject to availability and meeting certain conditions. Another aspect that some municipalities use are request planning fees. And so Barrie targets their intensification of mixed-use areas by waiving planning application fees for the project, as well as Peterborough pays planning fees as part of affordable housing projects. So one a big component or a potential big incentive is the tax increment equivalent grant. So that's sort of reducing taxes over a certain period of time. So that way it incentivizes developers to develop and increase the value of the property. So you see Barrie that uses the tax increment grant program for 5 years. We see that Cambridge forgoes tax increases if that project remains affordable. Peterborough uses a 10-year tax incentive program. They do the first 5 years, use 100% of the increase being granted back. And Owen Sound sort of ties in tax incentive-free equivalent grant. They actually extend it if it's a sort of bonusing provision of assisted living facilities or maybe 3 units above what the Ontario Building Code requires or provides. So there has been discussion about building permit fees. So the only sort of evidence that I'm aware of is Barrie being the target for intensification of mixed-use areas. They provide for 50% building permit fees rebate on order for related commercial development. Obviously, parking requirement reductions have been discussed throughout this summit. So Peterborough waives cash and lieu parking fees for affordable projects. That would probably come into play in the downtown areas where there's limited parking. So with the limited parking, they would otherwise have to provide cash and lieu for apartments that they are rated or upper floors. These Peterborough vehicles. Sudbury has reduced parking. They tie it to locational criteria. So essentially, if the project is near bus lines, they'll consider reduced parking. I think the city of Belleville itself, we're going through an official plan update, zoning bylaw update. So this would be sort of the perfect timing to determine exactly what reduced parking requirements could be. Parkland fee reductions, specific to the actual project. So if someone is developing a 1-acre site for a bigger enterprise development, they could, so the city could look towards eliminating parkland fees for that specific project to assist. There has been discussion on additional height density. Most of the FCCIPs we reviewed were more from communities similar in nature to Belleville. You can see evidence of sort of these bonusing provisions. It is something we can consider, but probably wouldn't have a lot of uptake at this point in time. Other elements that are specific to different CIPs, Bruce and Barrie kind of expand their programs so that if stuff such as Habitat for Community, extend the benefits of an affordable home or affordable program to nonprofit organizations. Barrie does provide large incentives to emergency, transitional, and social housing, which would be something interesting to consider since we've heard the need of that over the last 24 hours or so with the summit. Owen Sound does provide no interest loans for provision of affordable housing units. I believe that more specifically relates to second units. Peterborough has agreements that require that project meet the definition of affordable for 20 years. And so essentially, when we're looking at incentives, if we were going to consider a housing CIP, I think the 3 areas focus would be with regards to development charges, planning fees, and tax equivalent grant. Housing CIP could also look at building permits, parking requirement reductions, parkland reductions. Although I don't think that additional height density would be applicable, we can still look at that through our CIP. So essentially, through housing CIP, we would really, targeted to incentivizing the types of projects we want, obviously affordable, but rental tenure. I think we want to make sure that the project and the official plan policies, we would want to make sure that we would want to prioritize it. We want to prioritize intensification areas. We would want to make sure it's high-rise. We want to make sure that it fits into the community as well through its design. We even though it does involve public involvement, we do need to create a consensus for support developing this. And I think when we do go through this process, we'll sort of determine how many public meetings as well. We'll also get formal public feedback or what the proposed incentives would be. It is a bit of the timing of the process. It doesn't happen overnight. There are sort of 3 stages: the why, what, and how. This is from the publication from the ministry on creating a CIP. So obviously we'll go through details. We'll see there's about 7 pages of steps that have to be taken. So it is a bit of a lengthy process, but it's also a process that's heavily involved in public consultations. May result in something that the community can support, and that would also include residents and would also include the development industry. So next steps, I think there is potential if we are going to do a CIP to sort of incorporate our existing downtown CIP as well as our brownfields CIP into an overall CIP that focuses on housing. Both those programs do have components related to incentivizing housing. Maybe there's some bonusing that can be happening if they're specific to downtown or on the brownfields. Obviously, it does need financial resources. The most important thing, and I think we heard from the CMHC yesterday, is that there are short timelines involved. We heard from one of the local brokers that they pursue incentives because of the short timeline. So I think if we do have a housing CIP, it has to be very efficient improvement process. And what's most important as well is we have to fully commit to implementing it, arguing it, monitor it, and perhaps update it over time if certain parts of the program are working. So what hopefully we're looking for in terms of, we've got a lot of feedback to the one is we're going to continue developing a CIP with a full understanding of what the incentives will work through consultation with the building industry, the financing industry, as well as the community. And we want to make sure that innovative ideas generated by the site can be supported by the housing CIP in addition to the official zoning bylaw.
Excellent. Thank you. We had so much information yesterday, and I just felt that it would be helpful for us to have a refresh on that, and I thank you. I have to say I am so proud to be part of a council that is willing to listen to people who have experiences and expertise. Our members of council sat patiently through a very long day. I had an opportunity to speak in terms of opening comments and then closing comments yesterday and opening comments this morning. They did not. They sat patiently, they were engaged, they asked excellent questions. And now I want to give them an opportunity to express their thoughts on what we've heard, what we've learned, and then possibly some suggestions going forward. If I can ask you, council, to keep your comments to around 3 minutes, I would appreciate it. And I'll recognize Councillor Carr first.
Thank you, Mayor Panchuk. And first of all, I want to thank you personally for your leadership. This is the first time that we've gathered as a council and as a larger community to talk about housing. And it pleases me to see so many stakeholders. I know that at the end of the day, our housing solution is going to take all levels of government. It's going to take multidisciplinary solutions through the private sector, but also through our nonprofit agencies that support the vulnerable sector within our community. Because we know that housing, mental health, substance abuse, food insecurity all correlate together. And so we have to look at the larger solution. We've been presented with some great best practices in other jurisdictions, and I'm a firm believer is we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it's out there. We We take the best practices from the communities that have implemented different strategies and have proven results, and we go from there. But I also want to touch on the fact, when we talk about affordability, it has to relate to income. And we've got a lot of stakeholders here, but one stakeholder group that isn't here, but I think a message needs to be sent, is to our employers. We need to really consider and look at the income in our community. We've heard from various groups that there is some income suppression here. Our average wage in the industrial park is approximately $15. And take a moment to wrap that in your mind. If you were making $15 an hour, how do you sustain yourself? How do you raise a family? How do you put healthy food on the table? And so it goes hand in hand. So it impacts our affordability. It impacts our local economy as well. There's less money to circulate in our local economy, which then impacts local business. So I'm going to call on our local employers to take a look at their wages they're paying their employees. Is it a livable wage? Is it sustainable in today's economic environment? And if you can have the capacity for increased wages, I honestly believe it impacts not only the well-being of your direct employee, but their family and the community at large. And so I'll make that call out there, but I look forward to some solutions here that we can implement at the municipal level. But again, it's going to take all three levels of government, funding at those levels, and then implementing some solutions. I think we need to look at some targets and look forward to some solutions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate and thank sincerely all of the participants for their efforts to provide this informative session. Just to recap, from the federal level, we have Canada's first ever national housing strategy, a 10-year, $40 billion plan for housing across the continuum of need. Provincially, we have the Affordable Housing Act to authorize secondary suites and require council to pass zoning laws regarding the use of garden suites and extending their use to 20 years. At the municipal level, we have an engaged and willing council led by a compassionate and dedicated mayor. We look to all information and act on policy to the benefit of all of our citizens. In the community, from my perspective, we have another class of people. We have the working poor, as referenced by Councillor Carr. We have people struggling to maintain their housing. And while I do not have exact numbers, I do go out and talk constantly. Vulnerable, requiring the help of others, is a segment of society. When I was young, they were the poor. We will always have the poor with us, it was understood. This class, and the seniors who have worked all their lives and are fearful to maintain their houses, that is an entire class that I don't see addressed. That is a type of housing that I haven't really heard referenced. And I'll just toss out what I've seen so far across the city. I applaud all building, but the Aldersgate Village, those of you who are familiar with the concept, I would love to see some builders take a look at Aldersgate and the way that it functions and the number of individual, tidy, one-bedroom apartments that are very suitable for single people of all ages, and they have every size and shape to fit the needs. Apartment buildings are very expensive to build, I understand that, and that money must be recouped. Anyone who rents must do damage control and must upgrade. Expenses must be paid. But affordable housing, as I understand it, for this class of working poor is not being addressed, and that's what I'm really looking for. I appreciate every piece of information I'm given, and I'll review it. That's just a personal piece that I'm throwing out for discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Culhane.
and again, just to echo some comments, just incredible summit, just nice to have these conversations. And for us as council, really eye-opening, just to listen to all the groups in the last couple of days and just to understand what's happening. For myself, you know, to hear a couple stats that are really great, and some stats we don't know. One, that we have 4,100 rental units in Belleville, but it's the same as 2009. A 2.4% vacancy rate that mirrors Canada's numbers, surprisingly. But a number we don't know is how many units do we need? How many is our goal? And if we were going to set a goal, I'd personally like to see something around 3 or 4% as vacancy, which probably means that as a goal for council, I'd like to personally set that we're looking at about 6 years to create somehow 1,000 units. One of the biggest potentials I see is in secondary units. I know that when council was going back and forth in the last term, we came up with finally a bylaw that was passed just in November 2018. A great presentation yesterday on secondary units. But I think there is public missing education on secondary units and the ability for that. And I'm going to talk about it as a whole for the whole housing crisis that we're in. It's complex, and it's not just rental, it's also in housing and the mixed middle, as we talked about different mixed units and possibilities in Belleville. I really like what Kitchener has done, and I think there was a couple other cities, I think Owen Sound, that gave loans to owners who want to create secondary suites in their homes or in coach houses, and those loans would be $15,000 to $25,000. And the rule being that if you create those units, you have to operate them the same as we've seen with other partners, as 80% of market rent, and that is for the life of the loan, whether that be 15 or 20 years. Maybe there'll be a building permit, or maybe there's other ways that we can safely implement that for the city and make sure that one, we're getting permits, and two, that people are taking advantage of that to create more units. If we had a goal, again, we have a lot of homes in the city, not only to have secondary suites created from existing homeowners, but if new home builders are creating secondary suites within their homes. I know that Clemency Group have been doing that. Maybe we can see over 5 or 6 years a goal, or 2 or 3 or 400 of those units being created of the 1,000. The affordable projects, the great projects we've seen done from Hastings County and other groups, they're just incredible. And the more that we can see those being created, I think are very important. And more importantly, the private projects that are coming out. And Aldersgate was mentioned, and Amy's here from Aldersgate. Aldersgate wants to create another 32 units. I know Councilor Culhane just mentioned that, another 32, but what they need is private investment to kickstart that. So something perhaps we can do as a city is work with trying to bring together private investors to look at ready projects, and they may not be just local investors, it might be investors from outside. We're looking for shovel-ready projects. I like the element of having an altruistic sense of these projects, that you're doing good for other people. I know we've already had that locally from Mr. Spry, but I think that's something that we can do more of and get that going. There's intensification, there's the mixed middle. I really like that's been done north of Stream, where we not just have single detached homes, we have stacked townhouses, we have townhouses themselves. I think the more that we proactively work with developers to make sure we're doing mixed projects in different segments of our city, I think we'll hopefully see different affordable options for homes, not just the single detached that are normally seen. I'm hoping to see that as a whole. And I want to speak just for a moment, a couple other things I had were Loyalist College. I really want to see that we work, and I know they're not here, but working with them, they're here, sure, they're great. So working with them on new student housing, and perhaps some of the innovative ideas we saw yesterday, speaking about maybe modular student helping or housing or temporary solutions to make sure that we're housing some of those students properly and safely in our city before we can get more money, or Loyalists can get more money to build some larger residences. They are growing, and that's great for our city, but we need to work with them in housing as well. And what I'm calling the complex solution of building as a whole in Belleville. There's about 5 different elements of that. We're building right now, on average of the last 10 years, about 210 homes a year. And that's not a great number. We were over 300 or 300, almost 400 in 1 year. But I think to grow as a city, to safely grow, and to be affordable as we grow, so speaking of all housing types, and not see a point with supply and demand where we see houses unaffordable for any family. working class and seniors, etc., we need to really work on getting to a better number of homes that we're building per year. And the 5 things that I'm seeing of detriment to that is one I've addressed before, is skilled labor. So continuing to work on developing skilled labor for builders. Growth of small builders. So small builders themselves are hitting a limit of about 50 homes a year. But can we help those small builders that are here grow? A lot of times when we solve innovation, it's getting mentorship to help these small businesses grow, whether that be organizational development, making sure they have enough resources, administration, skilled labor, and maybe sometimes it's funding. Investors in funding as a whole, we have projects like Aldersgate, just need a little bit of a boost to get going. They can go after funding. Is there some investment that we can rally around the city to get local investors, outside investment in, to look at shovel-ready projects that can be started and get going? Again, building department working with developmental charges and building permit fees. I think once we get things moving and we get interest, those are things that we can implement to help deals be done. Land is a big problem, so identifying surplus land, identifying land, again, in the city center intensification plan done in 2012, they've identified up to 1,300 different residential units. If you look at intensification, almost done. And last is things like materials. So I think it's very complex. We need to work together, but I think this has been a great start, and hopefully after today we can implement some of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor McCaw, are you prepared?
Okay. Thank you very much. I've probably spent 25 years of my life in housing, in real estate. I can tell you right now, this is probably the worst housing market that I have ever seen, even though I've now retired from it. The problem goes far beyond affordable housing. It's a complete housing crisis. And when we're in this housing crisis, it just furthers the need for the affordable housing, because people can no longer move up and buy a home. They're forced to their rental accommodation, which in turn drives the rental pricing up even higher, which makes it unaffordable for many people. I think the Quinte Landlords Association reminds me of some of the issues that go further beyond our municipality. And I clearly believe that sweeping changes are going to be needed here. The Residential Tenancy Act. We saw some great slides yesterday, great for us to see, but not so great for what they were. Landlords are faced with some real issues, and I can well understand why. People don't want to be in the landlord business anymore. It just simply doesn't make sense, unless of course you're an Airbnb. Now Airbnb, and I understand why people are in it, but it also does pull rental units from our rental market, which again causes problems because we no longer have rental accommodations. I was happy to see the permission of the secondary suites. There was a great development, I think Councillor Williams mentioned it a few moments ago, in our northeast end. I did a lot of campaigning there, and I saw a lot of the homes that were built with secondary suites. And then I came to a spot in the road where we no longer permitted secondary suites, and we had all these great properties in this development that could have been more secondary suites. There's so many benefits to secondary suites, even having developments built specifically with that in mind. Senior citizens could be staying in their homes longer with the help of a family member living in the lower level. It certainly also helps homeowners be able to meet their monthly obligations and possibly even save for their retirement. So it has so many benefits. Secondary suites have so many benefits. Lately, what I'm noticing, and some of my colleagues in real estate that are still there tell me that not only are we having bidding wars on real estate transactions, but now we're having bidding wars on rental accommodations. Sometimes bidding wars taking rental accommodations up 20% to the asking rent price, which to me is phenomenal. This is something that I have never encountered in my 25 years of real estate. Another issue I find that's becoming problematic is, and of no fault of anyone, is we have international students coming into our community, and they now are struggling to compete with individuals in the community for rental accommodations. So when Councillor Williams did mention how he would like to work with perhaps Loyalist College to deal with this, I think that's a great place to start. I mean, certainly I employ some international students, and I know their struggles when they come here to the city, so that's certainly an issue as well. Just something to mention, we have 4 subdivisions that will be built out, completely finished within 2.5 years. What happens after that? Will we have something else ready? That in itself, if we're out of properties, we're out of homes, that's going to create a further process. I would like to see us, we've heard some suggestion that upfront costs are a problem in building out some of these units. I think from a standpoint of single-family individuals that wish to build a unit, it would certainly be nice if we could implement something, and I'm not sure how we can do it, but I'm sure this council can look at it. For a dollar for dollar grant matching process, up to a maximum, if someone were to put a secondary suite in their home. I mean, that's certainly something that, it's not going to be as great as perhaps something Mr. Spry's doing, but at least, one by one, this could create an environment for, young families to be able to stay in their home, but have someone there to help supplement their income. So those are some of the thoughts that I've had and jotted down based on the presentation. So I think it's been very informative, and I hope we look forward to looking into how we can make this actually better. I don't think it's going to be immediate, but I do think if we continue at it, we will see the end of this, but it's not going to be overnight.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor McCaw. Councillor Millette, and we'll ask you to go next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After a full day of in-depth, insightful comments and input, it quickly became apparent at the end of the day there's a wealth of opportunity, resources, and ideas to be tapped to help address Belleville's housing crisis. The question I have to ask is, have we as a city become hidebound in our thinking as it applies to housing and rental accommodation approvals? It became abundantly clear through no fault of our own staff that we have indeed. This has occurred not over the past few years or even the last decade. We've had myriad rules, regulations, and policies in place that have worked in the past, so why fix what ain't broke? Put it globally. In a word, it is in fact broken, but how to fix it? The longer we dither navel gaze, the longer grow the waiting list for affordable housing. Do we have some innovative projects in the pipeline and in the final stages of actually being built? Absolutely. The examples of how we can do better became glaringly apparent one day. One need only look at the progress we've made on the positive side of the 3P partnerships. The distinct builds on Sydney Street, for example, of how collaboration, ingenuity, commitment, and use of available urban space can result in homes, real homes, for those who need it most. And yes, the world does need more Phil Spry's. Likewise, how inspiring is the collaborative 3P effort that resulted in 6 remarkable housing units built for the almost as remarkable price of $1 million at 110 North Park. As we heard, there are many, many seemingly unusable slivers of such land in this city that are serviced. Near amenities and transit just crying for development. But until motivated and relatively unfettered involvement from those in the private sector willing to step forward as one of the all-important P's in the 3P formula, private investors step forward, few of these projects can be launched simply with the good intentions of municipal and county's sources of funding. We all know the constraints on our budgets mean municipalities simply cannot finance, build, and manage these projects on our own. I would like to see some concrete steps moving forward. I bullet marked a few of them. We're reminded that as our population has hit a magic formula, we now have a dedicated CMHC staff person whose sole role is to analyze and help strategize for the city of Belleville. Let's make full use of the staff resource in the CMHC for any and all available programs, funding, advice, and expertise we can access. Regulatory quagmires are almost always cited by those who are planning for building or building new housing. It's almost cliche to say, let's cut the red tape. There Surely we can make a conscious effort to streamline the process to help ease and speed the approvals of affordable and multi-residential rental housing whenever it presents itself to City Hall. There is a way. Make it happen. Without sacrificing regulatory control or flooding codes, instruct staff to ensure priority projects for affordable or multi-res rental housing is flagged and fast-tracked. If needed, have a dedicated series of procedures for dedicated staffer or staffers, to shepherd the projects through the hurdles. We're always pleasantly surprised by the many philanthropic gestures from individuals in our community who regularly step forward for initiatives ranging from the United Way, Belleville General Hospital fundraising, and many others. Those individuals likely have never been approached with an eye to suggest that they might want to perhaps think of helping their community and engaging in 3D partnerships. And so we've seen in some of the current projects that are being built or in the pipe. Let's address them directly. We have these as well to make attractive land known to outside developers. Perhaps, as Councilor Williams has suggested, through the Queen Economic Development Corporation, have shovel-ready projects ready. Some of this is unconventional, but as we've heard, it's time to think outside the box. Nothing or very little will get accomplished unless there's private money in the game. Convincing those with that money is crucial. Let's make a point to market our ideas, the needs and the ways we in the city can make this work. I'm sure this is not news to anyone who listened to the presentations Monday, but please, let's look at our fee structures and approvals. Can we establish a forgiveness or exemption process to make more funds available to help ease the fee burden on legitimate projects? Is there a mechanism whereby qualified affordable housing or multi-res rental applications can be made more attractive to developers as it pertains to cost of applications? It's a simple matter of sweetening the pot, sure, but it was repeated time and again from many who spoke Monday. And as we've been shown, other municipalities are already waiving fees, cash in lieu for parking and green space regulations. Let's get creative. The situation is dire and cries out for creative solutions. Let's go that way.
Thank you very much, Councilor Millett. Councilor Kelly, are you,
Thank you, Mayor, and appreciate the summit the last day and a half, and thanks to all the presenters. Lots of education shared, and I think that's the key, is education. And thanks to folks at Sydney Place. Phil, I really enjoyed that presentation, and the work of John Van Hoosen with Pathways. It's a creative initiative, and to hear from the Three Oaks Foundation yesterday, and to hear from Michelle Ogden talking about the county's role, it was all part of education. For those who were here yesterday, I guess I said some of my thoughts yesterday, but thanks to the mayor, I got my 5 minutes here this morning. So, taking a lot of notes and was reviewing them last night, and as a new councillor, but not someone foreign to this area, I hear it all the time. And yesterday, Tim Meeks put a story in the Intelligencer, and by 8 o'clock last night, I heard from 2 different sectors. The guy contacts me, he's on ODSP. He lives in Belleville. He's been in the same home for 9 years. The owners of the home he rents upstairs are getting elderly. His biggest concern is they might sell it, and he's on his way out. And it's affordable right now with the work of the government for this gentleman. Received another message last night. A gentleman making over $100,000. And like I touched on, life sometimes changes things up unexpectedly. He's a divorced dad with 3 children. He's 51 years old, living in his basement with his parents. It's not how he thought it was going to happen. Is he the working poor? No, he's got a great job, government pension, the whole bit. But the reality is he's in his 50s, making 6 figures, because he can't afford, with child support and everything else that life throws at him, to get a place to live. You know, we have a school on College Street. We saw pictures yesterday of the work in Peterborough, what they did to a school. We've had a school, Quinte Secondary, sitting now for almost a year. We've known for over 2 years that school was closing. Maybe it's time to react or build a relationship with the school board and find out what their intentions are. Think of the apartments or homes of people that can live in there. Anthony did a presentation yesterday from CMHC. As of October 2018, there were 4,114 purpose-built rental apartment units in the city of Belleville, almost matching its 2009 numbers of 4,117. Means no growth in the last 10 years. I guess as a city, are we doing enough with our partnerships? I think Anthony's report says no. But are we fortunate now that we're going to be part of this marketing and we'll have that data every year, starting in the summer, I believe? You're darn right we are. You know, we had Habitat for Humanity speak, and Mayor Harrison touched on that in Quinte West. I think the numbers I wrote in my book, they have had 4 to 6 bills in Quinte West. In Belleville, since 2003, we've never offered up the land. I don't know who was sitting on the dust, but we're here to give a helping hand. Finally, the city hopefully will look forward that we can offer a discount on the taxes or give them a break on the taxes, because we're seeing it around us and it's working successfully. We look for affordable, adequate and suitable accommodations for people. It's not there, but with partnerships we can build. You know, we had the landlord tenant owner speak, as Councillor Williams touched on. 1,000 new doors. That's what the city needs. The gentleman also said 3,000 to be renovated. The struggles that they go through. I wrote numbers in my Hilroy that if there's an issue, 19 days before they hear from or before the city can react, they could be in the apartment for 6 months. I mean, I feel for the landlords. You begin to ask yourself, why get involved? And maybe I can just do this in the black market and not worry about it and kick it and deal with it that way. You know, I went to Kijiji last night to look at, I'm coming to Belleville and I'm going to get myself a place. The few I saw on Kijiji, and we heard the numbers yesterday, I think $976 is the average rent, or $1,036. Well, the places I looked for my accommodations with 2 teenagers and looking for close to school, close to hospital, close to my work, close to transit, like I talked on yesterday, you're looking at anywhere from 1,500 plus that would work for my family. Am I someone that has a good job? Am I a single parent? But I can connect with everybody else that's looking for affordable housing. So at the end of the day, Sean Kelly goes, okay, $1,500, car payments, this, gotta put money away for the kids, for university. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I gotta get a graduation dress for my daughter that's $500. I'm not alone on this. That's the reality of it. So affordable housing affects many. It's not just those that have the support of social assistance. Do more with partnerships, work with the landlords, and it's a tough road ahead. I think we've failed, but let's move forward, positive things to happen, and it's okay to be there to work together as a team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo the comments of my fellow councillors, tremendous input received yesterday across a variety of stakeholders. It certainly reinforced for me what we do have in front of us is a housing crisis, and it basically stems across the entire spectrum. And while affordable housing is certainly an important part of it, what sort of struck me was the reference to the middle in that spectrum of housing as we move along. And the one stat that struck me was that in Kingston, rental properties were over a period of time measured were tenfold what any other municipality in Eastern Ontario. So I know that staff took an action yesterday to sort of investigate what Kingston are doing. And I understand that they've got a university and that may be part of their overall strategy. As I listened to the presentation yesterday, and certainly my fellow councilors touched on a lot of the same points that I touched on, I think we need to sort of boil it down to what can we as a city do in the immediate and midterm to try and address the issue. And I think there are things we can do. So municipal regulations need to be conducive to development, device first range of housing. And Stephen touched on the things that we can do in terms of land use and development properties. He mentioned, someone mentioned strategic planning, and also the fees and levies that are placed on development. So those are the things, the areas that municipalities can do something. One of the presenters yesterday used the word provocative, and sort of it got me thinking in terms of we need to actually do something revolutionary almost to address the housing crisis. I don't think it's sufficient enough to just sort of chip away at it. I think if we're going to expect private enterprise to step up and partner with us, then we really need to throw some skin in the game. So I've got seven areas that I want to touch on in terms of things that I would like to see the city consider and maybe move forward on. So the first one is to create a rental housing building reserve of $1 million. And that $1 million will be used for rental properties, and it will be used in my proposal with 1,000 units at $1,000 per unit. And the only hook would be that construction would have to start and finish in the term of this council. So we know that there are some applications that are in front of us, and I'm sort of hoping that this will motivate them and others to sort of step up. And how we finance that would be part of the operating plan discussion. When we think of it in terms of a tax impact, we're talking, if we were to spread it over 2 years, it's 1/4 of 1%. So, not saying that we would accommodate it through a tax increase, but that's the size of the tax increase that we want to go there. Some of the others were touched on. I'd just like to add to it. So I think we do need to create density targets, and I do think that we do need to look at policy in there in terms of treatment and development charges. One of the other things that struck me yesterday was the use of a tax abatement, potentially over 10 years. I think one community was using 20. I think that's perhaps too long. Other councillors have touched on it, and I'll touch on it as well. Promote secondary suites. I think we need to look at, as Councillor Williams and others have said, providing some incentive that other communities are using quite successfully with that 80% rent target. I was really pleased to see Dave Morris from Habitat for Humanity was part of our audience here. It's something that other councillors have talked about in terms of our ability to do more. And one of the things that I would like us to do is to donate the land and or a building and or in lieu grant to support 6 units per year for the next 4 years. So for the term of council, 24 units. We talked about redeveloping underutilized industrial and commercial sites, but really we focused on commercial. And I think we talked about having a 60-year supply of commercial like to say is that in the mix of intensification, we should look at our northeast section of the city. One of the presenters talked about work, live, and play here in Belleville. If you work in the northeast, you might want to live in the northeast, so I like that one. And then the other thing that I think it was Phil that maybe mentioned that there was a compressed cycle between planning through the planning process that I think took 4 months. And that was quite an achievement. I'd like to see that become our standard. So rather than the exception, I think that should be the rule. I think we should look at a concurrent approach in terms of how we can move that along. Excuse me. And just to close, as Mayor Manchuk advised yesterday, we're heading into our operating budget season in 2 weeks. So staff do have some time, a lot, but some time to review and analyze some of the recommendations that come forward, and perhaps we can incorporate those into our operating budget cycle. And the last comment I want to make is that the city has made significant improvements and investments over the previous terms, and there's multiple terms of council on infrastructure. And I think now is the time where we need to invest in a big way in housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Worship, for organizing this summit for the last 2 days. Been sitting on these social services for the last number of years, not this term, but I've seen the need for social housing over the last number of years. And unfortunately, as part of the two-tier system, we relied on the social services in Hastings County to provide most of our housing in some of those needs. And now it's back to the municipality to sort of come up with a platter and say, okay, we need to do more on our own rather than relying strictly on Hastings County to provide that housing. And it's presented, and I unfortunately had to miss yesterday afternoon for some personal reasons, so I missed some of the presenters, so I apologize for that. You know, we relied on developers in a big way to provide some housing for us, but we've also relied on agencies. And some of those agencies are strictly run their organization on donations. And that's wrong that we are relying on those people to provide housing. Like Three Oaks, Canadian Mental Health Association, we're all providing housing where we need to be the ones coming up with the ideas, and rather than them out trying to scratch money to provide that housing. We have developers like John here is providing housing, Phil Spry providing housing, and other ones, but that's not always the case that we can rely on that. You know, when we look at our area, we know our area is low income. We have a lot of seniors in our community, and those incomes are not sufficient to sustain our $1,500 a month rent. And as I said, other ones earlier, developers need to be paid for their building these apartment buildings, but we need to look at how we can best build new units that we can get those rents down to a reasonable amount, $900,000, $1,100, where some of them can afford it. But if you look at the government over the last number of years, the welfare rates, long-term care, or long-term social service for disability pensions have all been reduced in the last number of years. And when they get increased, they get increased by maybe 1.5%. When our rents get increased, and we look at over the number of years, our rents are increasing 2, 3, 4, 5%. We can't keep up with those people that need our assistance on the welfare rates and long-term disability pensions they're getting. So we need to be lobbying our governments to say, okay, this is not sustainable for those people that need the income, because if you take somebody on ODSP, $1,100 approximately social services here, they get their average rent is, even if they get into subsidized rent, their only rent is subsidized $200 or $300. They're still paying $700, $800 out of their $1,100 on long-term disability. And that leaves them $200 to $300 to buy rent, or to buy food, pay for transportation. That's not sustainable. And that's what's causing some of our housing shortage in this community, because they've got no place to live. We've seen that when we did it in the cold, people sleeping in the library. Now we went to the bus shelter. You know, that is a serious situation in our community. So not only, and then we got Loyalist College. Thank goodness we have Loyalist College. They're bringing in a number of students. That's causing a crunch in our housing. And you know, when we get a small amount of units that we have, and we're bringing in students, and we need the students here, we got no place for them to live. We as a city need to come up with a platter and say, how can we best, without taxing the people to death in our community, overtaxing them to subsidize some of this, but we need to work for developers. We need to work with a system where we can get some of that assistance out to the developers to build our units. Because without that, we will stay in this situation for many, many years, and we can't afford that anymore. Our city is growing. Population is expected to grow to 75,000 over the next number of years. If that is accomplished, we're going to be in a lot worse situation than we are right now. We need, as a city, need to act. We need to act now. We have to implement some of these incentives for our community. Otherwise, we're going to get more and more people that are struggling, and struggling big time, to have housing in our community with our mental health issues, as I said earlier, our seniors in our population, young families coming along. And yes, I agree with somebody earlier said we need to look at our income, because our income in this community is the national average lower than it should be, and we need to try to work with the employers to try to help that. And granted, the employers can only pay so much because they're trying to make a profit too. But this program has been a very worthwhile program. I think we've accomplished a lot, and I commend the mayor for bringing it forward as quick as he has, because not only in the city of Belleville is it a concern, it's a concern across Canada and Ontario. This is an issue situation we need to deal with. So I commend them, and those are some of the issues that I said, other communities have. How can we implement those? And that's what we need to work for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson, and thank you, councillors. Manager Ashton is now going to present some potential recommendations as a starting point for our deliberations following some stakeholder input. Manager Ashton, I think you have heard a unanimous voice of the desire for us to take action on this issue. I think all of us, to a one, have been very clear in identifying this as a problem, and now we're looking for a roadmap that we can properly and legally take action as a municipality within the confines of the Municipal Government Act. And can you talk about a starting point for us, please?
So in terms of potential recommendations, so we have prepared some recommendations for council's consideration.
Do you have a hard copy of them for council? Any hard copies of the? We have them. I think we need to go ahead and.
Okay, I do have them
on the yeah.
So in terms of recommendations, so we do have prepared recommendations for council's consideration. I think if we look at this housing summit, there should be a lot of ideas generated by a range of stakeholders for that deliver housing to the community. A lot of these ideas were generated during this presentation. There's probably a lot more ideas. Even though it's a very long session, there's still a lot more sort of things to consider. So I think we should lose fact of all of those contributions that we've had. That should be part of a larger side, that will take some time to implement. In terms of what the city has direct influence over in the shorter and long term, or shorter and medium term perspective, there are what we can directly influence is providing additional lands, providing incentives for affordable housing. So in the shorter term opportunities, they include updating the development charges bylaw to provide 50% development charge rebates for the construction of affordable housing units. In the medium term opportunities, we've identified increasing land supply for medium and high residential development by improving densification and mixed use policies in the official plan, which is currently being updated. And we also support that when it comes to zoning bylaw also update that involves open housing zone land. And obviously, in terms of financial incentives, undertaking a housing community improvement plan to provide incentives for making high-rise developments and mixed-use developments. Although I've also heard from council today that there's some interest in providing incentives for second units as well, so that would be something that can be considered for a housing community improvement plan as well. There are recommendations here, and it's one of those recommendations that got off. So the one, so I think it's important that we receive all the presentations and materials. I think when we consider, so that when we consider a housing strategy, council will report back on some of the information that's presented. Perhaps an overview of some best practices in developing a housing strategy, as well as some of the innovative ideas that we implement locally. I think in terms of the housing community improvement plan, the recommendations to direct staff to develop terms of reference to provide incentives for affordable rental units, in addition to leveraging the opportunities in the existing brownfields community improvement plan and downtown community improvement plan. Recommendation 4 speaks to looking at the development charges bylaw as incentives as a short-term measure, and that is to reduce development charges by 50% for affordable housing units. So within that recommendation, we exclude the areas inside the central business district as they already receive 50% benefit from the development charge bylaw. And I think too, if you want to look at through the official plan, coming from this session, there's the need to ensure that the official plan reflects some of the, because that is our guiding document and sets our priorities for the community. I think it's important that you direct staff to expand the terms of reference for the official plan update, including modernizing housing policies, intensification policies, and mixed-use policies in order to increase the supply of lands available for medium and high-density residential development, along with mixed-use development, and which will ultimately increase the supply of rental units in the city development. And the 6th recommendation, which you can't see on the slide presentation, but then these recommendations refer to the 2019 budget process.
Well, thank you, Manager Ashton. So these are our starting points.
I get feedback if I turn it up or not.
Before you get away, I have a couple quick questions, just clarification. We're going to hear from our stakeholders, and we're going to come back to this council to be able to go through it. On item number 2, which is the recommendations on next steps, we heard a lot about the need for prioritizing and fast-tracking particular types of development. Could those recommendations coming back, could those include a focus on prioritizing and fast-tracking these types of rental developments that we're interested in?
Yes, and I think obviously some of the members of council spoke to assigning resources to fast tracking, so yeah, that would be part of the overall strategy.
Okay. And then, sorry.
So in the short term, though, in terms of, the medium terms, excuse me, in terms of reference for the community improvement plan, we should also include very fast, efficient process in that.
No, I know when you mentioned that earlier, so that's excellent. But I think again, we need to send a message to the community, but also to ourselves that this is a priority for us, and that we need to bring a faster resolution. We've heard that from everybody. It takes so long for these projects to happen. On item number 4, we talk about the possibility of reducing development charges as a way to incentivize this type of development. Would it be wise, or is it necessary for us to have a minimum number of units that would be required in a particular development in order to qualify for that reduction, as well as a maximum? And the reason why I'm asking this is because obviously that would require municipal resources to go in to make up for those incentives. And from a budget point of view, we need to have a criteria of how to activate those funds, but also where the end line is. I don't think we want to get into the business of subsidizing this market forever. Certainly there's a way for us to go in to provide incentive to spark a number of doors, if that's the right term to use, to have created in our community, and then to exit and allow the market to continue to operate.
In response to your question, the housing CIP is probably the ideal spot to think about the charge reductions. And with housing CIPs, we can at any point in time say, enough's enough, we're not doing that program anymore. So in the short term, probably for the 1 to 2 years before the housing CIP is implemented, I wouldn't have any reservations. There's not going to be there will be sort of sufficient ability, but if you wanted to cap it at, say, 500 over the next 2 years of affordable units,
Or 2,000.
I think 2,000 might be more medium.
Thank you. And then the last item, just, we heard about this, and I know you addressed the fact that secondary suites need to be part of our strategy. And I think from hearing Mr. Marisek's and Mr. Denning's presentations yesterday on the challenges we have now with currently illegal secondary units that are a concern for us because they may not be safe. They're certainly, they haven't been inspected and they haven't been recognized. Some communities experiment with amnesty periods where they allow anyone to come forward with an illegal use. They would come in, the city could potentially waive the fees for the building permit that would allow for these units, and the inspection, and then also give timelines for people to become into compliance if there are any building code or other requirements. And so, those 3 things I would look at adding, and just if you can sort of consider that as we hear from our stakeholders next, and then we will be able to go right into discussion on that then. So thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to wait until after we have our stakeholders for us to reopen our debate, and we can make our decisions. Right now is an opportunity for all of our stakeholders who have been invited. We thank you for attending. We thank you for your patience as well. And there were a couple questions that we want to hear from you today, and I will give